Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. After a long time, it's my pleasure to be able to speak to you again on issues that I think are creating the severity in our planet's political, social, and economic points of view. To begin with, can all be well if our lead engine in the economic functioning of our world, the United States of America, is riding stridently into debt? No, it's not a good prognosis. And what follows it can be even more alarming. 22 trillion is the national state debt of America. 9 trillion is the corporate debt. And so far 2 trillion is the academic debt. With those sorts of numbers, it is, in my mind, a very, very difficult task ahead of them. So far, they have managed to conceal, well, not conceal is not the right word, but encloak these in matters made simpler. I remember in 2009, sitting in New York, I was told that the two single factors that emasculated America was leveraging and hedging, and, of course, the crisis that overtook the housing market. Let's look at these three again. Since then, instead of shutting down the hedging market or the leveraging market, both have expanded 300 to 400%. And the housing market, unfortunately, has seen the cost rising and not enough homes being purchased. In other words, the inclination is towards prices lowering. Now, that has its own effect, and the critical factor there is that they will have to lower their own returns because they will have to reduce interests across the board to be able to encourage the market. But Mr. Trump says we've never had a market like this before. It's buoyant, successful, and nothing can touch it. And yet at the same time, only 4 times before in history, the last being a few years ago, in the time of the collapse of the financial markets, in the 2008, 9, 10 period, the Fed in America has cut the interest rate to stimulate the economy. But if the economy is so buoyant as Trump claims, how come we are considering a rate cut from the Fed in the very near future? The strong contradiction that the Fed only cuts the rate when the economy is seriously impaired must then be reviewed as a more realistic assessment. The President of the Bank of America said very chirpily Oh no, all the indicators are up. We have a very successful market. Well, there's a trade war with China. There is an on-again, off-again war with Mexico. There is a petulant and worried Trudeau sitting at the doorstep every day. And the vanity of President Trump to put across his way of working and belief and vision in his way of working for the world, not through globalization but through Trumpism, has definitely aided England into the Brexit mess. And then to play favourite to bring in his own Prime Minister in England, well, he has openly spoken disparagingly and even in a way rooted for the breakup of the Europeans. And they're between a rock and a hard place. They're up for re-election. The Germans want their candidate to replace Jean-Claude Juncker. The French, I think, have seen that they have lost that particular game. The Italians are playing a hardball game with the nationalists, and the Greens are not determinable. Europe has a leadership crisis, aided no less with Trump interfering through Brexit. But they have a little restraint there. NATO? Not really. NATO peddles its own brand. I think the problem he faces is that with the World Bank and the IMF outwitted by the Chinese as investors and suppliers around the world of available finances, the United Nations and the WTO are under question. And here the question is, with 3 people you rule the United Nations in the Security Council permanent seats. That's what the West has now. Definitely Britain has been dragged into the American sphere with no court of appeal. The French are less adventurous, and this frightens the Americans into being a little skeptical about what Trump is doing in Europe. And I think the V-Day celebrations this year were a sign of that. But at the same time, you cannot ignore that Mr. Trump is taken on a unilateral means of declaration of anything he wishes to put to the world. A lot of it not acceptable. The Warsaw Pact was dismantled. The Muslim world was never united, not difficult to dismantle. But with the re-emergence of a second challenging power, the unipolar world may not find itself so conveniently lodged. I think that with China and Russia, and may I remind you, I've been saying for years that SCO must be the source of unity. And I always said, even if India plays a funny role, there comes a time when they will have to defend their own interests. And as you've seen recently, Trump had to desert them on the tariff game. He has been light-handed, but the writing is on the wall. So this is the time to pursue it. With the Gulf on a cusp of a war that supposedly nobody wants, but everyone proclaims. It's a witch hunt. I don't think it's going to yield any results that are beneficial to mankind. I appeal for peace, and I've been doing so for a long time. You can't take a nation, strangulate it economically, and put your heavy foot on its belly and press hard, and then expect that nothing will happen because you're almighty. It doesn't work that way. Things will happen. Others too will get involved. And let's admit it, the time has come to realize that the unipolar world built through globalization after the Second World War has come towards a fruitless period. And an aging power with mighty weaponry, but there is so much of technology yet to reveal itself, and that is frightening. So we have a world teetering. We have an economic, military power teetering. Who would have thought, with 8,000 planes sold, that the 737 MAX of Boeing would be lifted out of the skies after 2 crashes because of shortcomings? So, countries have started buying gold, another hedge. America was the ultimate source, or shall we say, repository of all monies, the institute of the last resort for the financial world. People are buying gold, which is indicating elsewhere. People are consolidating local pacts, regional pacts, to try and sort out things. So, until we meet next time, just to keep you posted, what is happening is the world is in a muddle. What is happening is that they have unwound regulations and systems they put up since the Second World War themselves for their own superiority purposes. But they have somewhat unwound this. Themselves, they are hearing that it had not worked. But it had worked. It had given a plane, a table to start from. I'm not sure how much of this unwinding is going to be beneficial. I'm not sure. One thing is clear. I said about 8 years ago, please sit down as you did at Walter and decide the determinants of value. Until value cannot be determined for the emerging markets, as they call them, the emerging big players, you will have more of this jockeying and less of peace in the world. Thank you.